Namaste, World Raisers. Sabina and Roger here. Welcome to our Ashtavakra Gita study. Today we're going to read the chapters 4 to 9. Glorification of self-realization, 4 ways to dissolution, the higher knowledge, nature of self-realization, bondage and liberation, detachment.
Let's keep in mind that we have to be ready for these sorts of teachings, which is why we recommend, if you're new to this video right here, if you haven't watched the previous ones, we recommend that you go back and you watch those ones, especially the first and second video that we did. We also have a playlist we're going to link to where we covered some introductory videos prior to get more knowledge about what's going on here. We got to remember that we need to prepare our minds for such incredible, profound wisdom. Same thing as we did during the Bhagvada Gita study that we did last year. We need to pray and open our hearts and our minds for the capacity to be able to comprehend these profound teachings, because we're speaking about ultimate reality.
Take a deep breath and release all tension in the body and the mind. Become present and make yourself available for the ultimate truth, the ultimate teachings, to sink in ever more deeply. Chapter 4. Glorification of self-realization. Surely one who knows self, though he plays the game of life, differs greatly from the world's bewildered burdened beasts. Truly, the yogi feels no elation, though he abides in the exalted state, yearned for by Indra and all the discontented gods. Surely, one who knows that is not touched by virtue or vice, just as space is not touched by smoke, though it seems to be. Who can prevent the great soul, who knows the universe as self, from living life as it comes? Of the 4 kinds of beings, from Brahma to a blade of grass, only the sage can renounce aversion and desire. Rare is he who knows himself as one with no other, the Lord of the universe. He acts as he knows and is never afraid.
Wow, so the glorification, that is an apt title. So it's talking about, for those enlightened beings, those mystics who have attained the highest level of enlightenment, moksha, liberation. They're untouched, they're unburdened by everything. And we also know now from our study of Sanatana Dharma that not all of the the demigods like Indra and such, they're not as liberated or as free as some of the higher deities and enlightened beings, of course. So we also learned that, like, even just through our study of Buddhism, when the Buddha became enlightened, he was contemplating kind of like what he was going to do now. And then it's actually Lord Brahma came to him and asked him to teach. And that's what kicked off his teachings, because, so to attain the highest, and that's what's so important of this realm that we're in right now, because we have access to the highest truth, the highest teachings, and in our human form, we have the capacity to go beyond, even more so than some of the gods and demigods that are still trapped, but they don't have as much suffering as we do. So there's this desire for liberation is not quite there. So it's truly a profound state of consciousness that us mortals, if we're encapsulated, it's very difficult to even comprehend and understand. We got to contemplate it and be like, what would that be like to totally transcend your limited sense of self, right? So they're calling it a great soul, right? Who knows the universe as self, totally beyond.
Chapter 5. 4 Ways to Dissolution.
You are immaculate touched by nothing. What is there to renounce? The mind is complex. Let it go. Know the peace of dissolution. The universe arises from you, like foam from the sea. Know yourself as one. Enter the peace of dissolution. Like an imagined snake in a rope, the universe appears to exist in the immaculate self, but does not. Seeing this, you know there is nothing to dissolve. You are perfect, changeless, through misery and happiness, hope and despair, life and death. This is the state of dissolution. Yeah, so talking about the true nature, your true reality, right? So the Atman that is one with Brahman, beyond duality and, the limitations of being identified with a limited self, right? So when you get into the true self, the higher self, the enlightened, Buddha nature that is always present, the pure light of pristine awareness itself, just pure consciousness, undifferentiated from the consciousness of the absolute divine. There's nothing to dissolve. It just is what it is, right? So when we're talking about Buddha nature and people to attain Buddhahood, attain isn't even the right word because it's already there. It actually is who you truly are. So it's about realizing it, not about acquiring something different and separate, right? Because there is only one thing, right? And then it's like a step down, filter, right? And then we're all perceiving reality through these filters, through our own level of, delusion, right? But ultimately, from the ultimate perceiving reality, the source of all that is, it's all consciousness.
I love the line in 5.1. The mind is complex. Let it go. I don't know, it really moves me. Because you try to figure it out. You try to purify it. But just like there's no end, And if you just accept it as it's complex,
Yeah.
It will never find peace, and you can just accept that and go beyond it simply. And then, then the peace of dissolution. Just let it go. Just don't identify with it. It's like, it's just non-stop, has all these preferences, these likes and dislikes, attachments. It's like, it has no end. Samsara, no end.
Yeah, so you let it go and also just let it be, right? Yeah. Be what it is, because when you're no longer identified with it, then you can also have this sense of trust, especially if you are on the spiritual journey and you understand the teachings and then you're aligned with them and then you have an intention to live that way, to be loving, kind, and caring, then you start to trust it. And then you see this ego being, operating, right? But from a higher point of view, even if you can't perceive it from there yet, you understand that it's your higher self that is, the source and the actual reason that this being can exist. So then you're almost, in a sense, you're kind of, submitting to God from the perspective of a lowly sentient being, but understanding that your higher self is one with God, right? So it's really God that is the awareness that is aware of everything, right? And that's why they say that, God is always present and always with you. It's the very light of consciousness that allows your mind to even exist in the first place, right? So then you settle into that, and then you begin to dissolve. And then also even higher beyond that, there's nothing to dissolve, because the you that you think you are, it doesn't exist in ultimate reality anyways. It exists in conventional reality, so we're not entering into nihilism where we think that nothing exists, right? We're settling in the wisdom of the absolute, knowing that how things exist, and there's a big difference there. So things exist because of the absolute, right? And then their appearance of it, right? Exactly what they're saying, right? Like a rainbow. And then we're knowing that, hey, we're just part of the unfoldment of the infinite divine play.
Chapter 6. The Higher Knowledge. I am infinite space. The universe is a jar. This I know. No need to renounce, accept, or destroy. I am a shoreless ocean. The universe makes waves. This I know. No need to renounce, accept, or destroy. I am mother of pearl. The universe is the illusion of silver. This I know. No need to renounce, accept, or destroy. I am in all beings. All beings are in me. This I know. No need to renounce, accept, or destroy.
Wow, I'm getting a Dzogchen flashback here, right? So very much the teachings of Dzogchen, are talking about that. There's nothing to accept and nothing to reject. Everything is what it is. So it's very much pushing, us into this state of equanimity, right? So it doesn't matter what happens or doesn't happen. There's nothing to accept. It just is what it is, right? And you just begin to just go with the flow and seeing everything as one. It's just all a divine play. Through happiness and despair, things are going to be arising, especially to the ego mind, and then we are accepting it as the unfoldment of our own karma. So we accept everything as our own, and then we own it, especially when you're getting into the fact that everything is within you. It's all yours, right? So it is what it is. You just go with the flow. Infinite space. The universe is a jar, and we know that the space outside of the jar is the exact same as inside of the jar, just like we're talking about consciousness. So the consciousness that pervades everything in the universe, right? It's the very light of creation itself. It's the same inside our minds as outside our minds. Right now we're just trapped in the veil, the Maya, that separates us from the outside, perceived outside consciousness, and then the inside consciousness. But really, it's due to the consciousness itself that there is even an inside or an outside, when in reality there's no inside or outside. It's beyond that, right? There's no duality. I am in all beings are in me. So this is the oneness of the light of awareness itself, right? There's no need to renounce, accept, or destroy. Just behave, right? Practice the teachings. Love one another. Going back to the first chapter, like pretty much the first line was love one another, care for one another, be compassionate, right? That's being spiritual at all times.
Without exception. Chapter 7. Nature of Self-Realization. In me, the shoreless ocean, the arc of universe, drifts here and there on the winds of its nature. I am not impatient. In me, the shoreless ocean, let the waves of the universe rise and fall as they will. I am neither enhanced nor diminished. In me, the shoreless ocean, the universe is imagined. I am still and formless. In this alone I abide. The self is not in objects, nor are objects in the pure and infinite self. The self is tranquil, free of attachment and desire. In this alone I abide. I am awareness alone. The world is passing show. How can thoughts arise of acceptance or rejection? And where? Beautiful.
Nice. So the nature of self-realization, so literally the nature of the enlightened mind that has transcended duality, and what it would be like. So the shoreless ocean, right? The universe, where there is no edge, there's no boundary, there's It's just all vast. So the universe is imagined. So this is going into, Maya. So the whole creation, it's within the field of consciousness itself. Very similar if you use the analogy of, the ocean, right? And then everything within the ocean is entirely dependent on the ocean, the water, right? For its survival. And then just like human beings and then people like not in the ocean, but just in the air, we seem to forget that we're entirely dependent on the environment, on the air, and we're entirely one with it. It's like literally we're breathing in what the trees are expelling, and then same with, beings in water and how they exist. And then they forget that, like you got to think for a fish in water, knowing that it's in water, but it's entirely lost. You're just in it. Right? Not knowing that you're entirely, not just in it, but part of it. You're actually arising from it. Yeah, so I am awareness alone. The world is passing show, right? So everything is just arising. And I like to think about, Lord Vishnu, right? Laying on Sheshnag in the cosmic ocean, and he's dreaming. In my mind, he's dreaming all of these universes. And so it appears very real when you're in it. To us, it appears real, but actually we're nothing but a dream in the mind of God. And due to his potency and his energy and his power of his consciousness, literally his consciousness is within all things. And then that's what's happening. That's what's evolving. So evolution and creation is the same process. And it's literally all happening in the infinite field of consciousness, which is none other than the mind of God, dreaming all of these universes into existence. Literally being the actual true, perceiver through all beings' faculties of perception, right? Literally, there's only one consciousness.
Chapter 8, Bondage and Liberation.
When the mind desires or grieves things, accepts or rejects things, is pleased or displeased by things, this is bondage. When the mind does not desire or grieve, accept or reject, become pleased or displeased, liberation is at hand. If the mind is attached to any experience, this is bondage. When the mind is detached from all experience, this is liberation. When there is no I, there is only liberation. When I appears, bondage appears with it. Knowing this, it is effortless to refrain from accepting and rejecting. Effortless. Sounds easy.
So simple.
Once again, just nothing to accept or reject. And when you're in that state of grasping on to the I, right, this limited identity that this is me, I am Roger, and I want this and I don't want that. So literally, these states are bondage, right? So instead, liberation is easily attained once you let go of those states.
So what would you tell people who say, yeah, but there are certain things that you can't accept in this world, and you have to stand up?
Well, then I would go right to the ultimate reality teachings, which many people aren't ready for that. But as spiritual beings who can understand that, if you study the Bhagavad Gita and you're understanding that we're immortal. We're immortal spiritual beings, and this temporary, illusory reality that we're in, it's like a prison, it's bondage. So we have to understand that and feel compassion for the world at large. We can feel that, but at the same time, we don't need to accept it or reject it. We become, and instead of being totally detached, we could be non-attached, right? Which means we're still in the world behaving, but we're not getting caught up in the divine play. And we're understanding that everybody ultimately is free in reality, and we're all here, kind of by choice, right? So, we're part of the divine play, and we're all playing our roles, even those really caught up in very negative situations, suffering horribly, and that really does happen in the world. But at the same time, nobody's really suffering and nobody's really dying, right? So these are concepts within the ego mind, and it's part of the prison, designed to keep us trapped. But from the higher perspective, if you understand that we're not these beings, these are just characters playing a role in this incredibly complex movie, right? And in reality, we're the awareness, the witness, the consciousness that is immaterial, it's eternal, it's immaculate, it's insolvable, right? It's insoluble. It's like can't be destroyed. It's just eternal.
Indestructible.
Right? Indestructible, right? Yeah, that's why up on our shelf there we got I am that, right? So what is the real I? So that's what we really go into with the highest teachings, and you turn that light of awareness, your consciousness inward, and then you get a glimpse of awareness itself, right? And you can't name that. That is not Roger. That is consciousness itself. It's beyond name and form, right? And so even you could say, instead of looking for who I am, look for what I am. What are we, right? In reality, it's pure awareness, pure consciousness, Buddha nature.
Chapter 9. Detachment.
Opposing forces, duties done and left undone. When does it end, and for whom? Considering this, be ever desireless. Let go of all things, and to the world turn an indifferent eye. Rare and blessed is one whose desire to live, to enjoy, and to know has been extinguished by observing the ways of men. Seeing all things as threefold suffering, the sage becomes still, insubstantial, transient, contemptible. The world is fit only for rejection. Was there an age or time men existed without opposites? Leave the opposites behind. Be content with what comes. Perfection. The greatest seers, saints, and yogis agree on very little. Seeing this, who could not be indifferent to knowledge and become still? One who, through worldly indifference, through serenity and reason, sees his true nature and escapes illusion, is he not a true teacher? In the myriad forms of the universe, see the primal element alone. You will be instantly free and abide in self. Desire creates the world. Renounce it. Renounce desires, and you renounce the world. Now you may live as you are.
In paragraph 9.3, he says, seeing all things as threefold suffering. Do you know what threefold suffering is?
No, I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Okay, let us know if you know.
So the world, insubstantial, transient, contemptible. So to really see it, and I'm recalling too from the Buddha's teachings, he was saying that it is a prison. It's like you're lost in a desert tract, you're blindfolded, your hands are like tied behind your back, you're starving and you're thirsty, and it's awful, right?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So we're literally locked in a cage, right? So how do we get out? Well, you practice the teachings. You got to let go of basically the world itself. So we're becoming detached while we're in it, right? And then this is through the practice of humility and compassion. So we're not dropping into levels of like anger and hate and despair. That's not going to help. That's not the way out at all, right? Even though you could use those states of like anger to be like, I didn't sign up for this. I want to get out. And then if you're motivated, if it helps your motivation to start climbing up the levels of consciousness, then it can be used positively, right? But at the same time, to be aware of the states of the ego mind itself, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't get caught up more than we already are. Yeah, so that's why. So 9.2, I really like that one where it says, rare and blessed, right? whose desire to live, to enjoy, and to know has been extinguished by observing the ways of men. And this is the sense that when you come on the spiritual path with like a really profound, desire to know and seek the truth, yeah, you're blessed in a way, and it's not due to your own efforts. There's some higher, power at play, your true self. It wants to be realized, right? So it's helping and guiding, and then you see that all the suffering that has happened was part of the process to get you back on the path. And what really helps is observing the ways of men. Just the perfect example of why we want to get out of this world is by observing the world. It's just, it's nuts right now. Like the politics and, the wars, the suffering, the different factions. It's just duality all over the place. My way is the only way. You guys are going to hell. It's just so full of judgments and opinions. And all of these, even those who think that they're already saved, yet everybody else is not. You can just see the ego in all of it, right? Yeah. So there is no salvation there, right? The only true liberation is to see it. Okay, this is a crazy loony bin. How do we get out? Well, you just let it go. It's all a transient, illusory play that doesn't exist in reality, right? Conventional reality, yeah, it appears. Mm-hmm. It appears very real. But ultimately, it's not. What is everlasting? Well, that is the true self. That's the soul. Yeah. That's the Atman beyond these limitations.
And it has also no end, the world. Samsara, it has no end. There will always be wars. There will always be, the lower levels of consciousness present.
Well, that's the material realms, right? So the material realms, you're embodied as a material being, and then you become attached to the label and the form, and then here you are. You're separate. It's entirely designed that way, right? Mm-hmm. But as we transcend the material natures, the material realms, then you enter into the spiritual realms. And I love what Sanatana Dharma teaches is that, the spiritual realms are greater, like they're way bigger than the material realms. And the material realms are like basically manifesting from just a fraction of the ultimate reality's power, so God, right? And it's just for beings like us who want to experience this, right? And then find our way back home.
Exactly. There is a way out. And this is what the teachings are all about. The world is suffering, but, there's a way out of the illusion of suffering.
Very much, the Four Noble Truths, right?
Yeah.
First is to recognize that we're suffering, right? And then we can seek to get out.
Even if you think you're happy, if you chase all the pleasures in the world and you have a really fun time, but it's in the nature of suffering in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's impermanent. It does not last. It's not the lasting, blissful happiness, the true joy.
Yeah, and then we're caught up in even the prison of thinking that we're human, right? So then that's perpetual too. So then you're an embodied being, and then you think that that's your true nature, and then you're always going to be drawn to reincarnating as a sentient being instead of transcending that and realizing that, you're just a pure, conscious, aware soul, spirit, Atman, right? The point of light is just pure awareness. That's entirely, beyond material existence. So one thing, 9.5, the greatest seers, saints, and yogis agree on very little.
This is pretty good.
You want to touch on it?
No, me.
Do you know what it's talking about?
Well, because it's all, just from what we learned so far, there's like all these teachers and teachings, and they seem to contradict each other, and everybody has their own way of viewing things. No?
Okay, So maybe from within duality, so teachers, enlightened beings are going to speak based on like the culture that they're teaching to, and then whatever, language they grew up in, right? So yeah, there's going to be differences in terminology, words, style, language, of course. And then so we can hear two different enlightened beings teaching the truth, and they seem contradictory. Like even within Buddhism, right? When we're talking about mind, what is he talking about? Is it mind or is it no mind? What is the way? And it all depends on what your understanding of mind is, right? So
yeah, or God and Buddha nature.
Yeah.
God and Buddha.
What is God? What is Buddha nature? Because they don't care about arguing with others and what they taught. They're concerned with who they're teaching to and what is most applicable to you, right? And then all these teachings, especially from the great sages of the past, they weren't teaching in the sense that, okay, I want to write some books so that in 1,000 years people are going to read this and understand it. No, they're literally teaching to students and disciples at the time just for their benefit. And then, right? And then, so then you got teachings of the Buddha, and then you got teachings of Jesus, and they seem so incredibly contradictory, but who were they teaching to, right? And they were for that purpose at that time. So for me, I actually understood Jesus's teachings way better once I understood what the Buddha was teaching, and vice versa, right? So they're not contradictory, they're just teaching the path in different ways, different language.
Beautiful.
The 9.6, of course, through worldly indifference, so you're becoming detached, and then serenity and reason, you're abiding in this equanimity. You understand your true nature. You escape the illusion, right? Is he not a true teacher? Well, absolutely, because he's going to teach just by his beingness, right? So the ego is gone, and he's just being blissful and happy, totally one with ultimate reality. And then if sentient beings come to him for guidance and help and wondering why, then yeah, he's going to be of service because there's nothing else to do in this realm, right? It's literally the most important thing. There's nothing to strive for. There's no wealth to gain. It's just all about the most important thing in reality is the consciousness of sentient beings, right? That's it. Oh yeah, and then I love 9.7 when it talks about the primal element alone. The primal element alone, which is basically the source of everything, of all elements. No elements would be able to exist if it wasn't for consciousness. So that is primal, right? It's like your own indwelling consciousness, awareness. If it wasn't for that, you couldn't say that anything exists. Right? I can't stress that enough. Right? It needs to be contemplated. It needs to be thought of. How do I know that I exist? There's only one way that you can know, and that's due to that, right? So then even when we're talking about spirit, if there's this, thinking, are you a soul? Are you a spirit? And then if you leave the body and you're in the ethereal form, so totally non-material, kind of like in the Marvel movies when, Doctor Strange gets pushed out of his body, and then there's this floating, ghost image there, right? So even beyond that, so there they can see the ghost image, but in reality, maybe you can't see it at all. So how would it exist, right? So even if you think that you're a spirit and then your form is like a spiritual form and then you're going off to other realms and astral traveling and all this sort of stuff, well, even in that case, the only way that you could know that you exist as a spirit is still due to consciousness. So if you want to debate whether your soul or your spirit is primary to consciousness and that your consciousness is due to your spirit, in my mind, that's still not true, because without consciousness and awareness, you wouldn't even be aware that you're a spirit. So awareness is fundamental, and that's exactly what this text is pointing to, as with all of the highest teachings. The Buddha taught it, right? Jesus taught it. They all teach it. Krishna taught it. Awareness. And then we're so fortunate that we're here right now in this realm at this time. Even though the world is going crazy, we have the opportunity to transcend all of the craziness.
Thank you so much, friends, for contemplating chapter 4 to 9 with us. That is a very, very special time.
Yeah, that was deep. So I'm in quite the meditative, contemplative, blissful state. I'm feeling really good, right? So yeah, just getting in tune with these teachings and then remembering and acknowledging our awareness, our consciousness itself, and then abiding in that to the best of your ability. It's really soothing to the soul. And then you can take what's happening in the world a little bit more graciously, right, with equanimity, this non-attachment, and then seeing it as, myriad displays. It's like, it's craziness, but we're not affected, right? We feel compassion. We open the heart, right?
Exactly.
And we be at peace, ultimately. Take advantage of this most precious opportunity to seek the truth, raise your level of consciousness.
And raise the world. Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Shanti, shanti, shanti.